The temperature in Port Charles always seems to rise when family fractures cross into public view, and the newest rift has been forged in the most delicate place of all, a boy's longing to see his sister. Danny has been caught between walls he didn't build and rules he didn't write, and what began as a legal maneuver has calcified into a quiet cruelty that everyone around him can feel. Drew, intent on proving that boundaries are strength, has pressed his order like a stamp into wax and demanded that the world accept it, no matter who gets scorched by the seal. He tells himself that discipline is love, that distance is protection, that a court document will prevent old habits from swallowing new hope. Yet the result is unmistakable. Scout is permitted to breathe in a room with family while her brother stands in the hallway, listening to the laughter through the door. Alexis has done what she can, assembling time with Molly and Christina and Rocco, as if placing plates on a table after the kitchen has already closed, graciously feeding who she may and swallowing the fact that one chair remains empty. It is a small victory dressed as compromise, and everyone understands that it is not enough, least of all the boy for whom the empty chair was meant. The more Danny's absence is normalized, the more the absence burns, and the ache of it travels through the house and into the city until it reaches the man who has never needed an invitation to protect his own. Jason has been weathering Drew's new hardness with a fighter's patience, absorbing the blows and stepping around the provocation, but seeing the bruises bloom on his son's spirit alters the geometry of restraint. This isn't about pride or old grudges anymore, it is about a line that, once crossed, redraws a father's entire map. In the beginning, Jason tries to solve the problem like a locksmith rather than a battering ram. He makes calls that he once swore he would never make, consults an attorney who knows which judges read family petitions after midnight, studies the narrow exceptions etched into that restraining order as if they were hairline cracks in a window he can push open without shattering the frame. He thinks about neutrality and patience, calculates the least destructive angle of approach, and still the outcome is unsatisfying, because every hour spent negotiating doctrine is another hour Danny spends counting the tiles in a room without Scout. Meanwhile, Drew becomes so focused on appearing immovable that he forgets immovability is not the same thing as wisdom. He has piled his days high with plans to pry Willow from the trap that closed on her life, and there is nobility in that mission, a fierce tenderness that wants to drag someone he loves back into the light. But the same hands that would lift Willow are also the hands that hold a door closed in Danny's face, and that contradiction corrodes the best part of him. Friends remind him that compassion doesn't dilute authority, it dignifies it. He hears the words and nods like a man watching rain hit a window he refuses to open. The more he insists, the more he isolates, and the more he isolates, the easier it becomes to mistake solitude for righteousness. Danny, who has inherited a soldier's stubbornness without the armor of adulthood, takes the heartbreak and folds it into determination. He studies the bus routes that cross town like veins, calculates the minutes between transfers, memorizes schedules as if they were spells that can breach a curse. He knows Scout's class times, knows the moment she will pass the mural of gulls outside the school library, knows the guard's routine at the Quartermain gate and which direction the man turns his head every 8th minute. None of this is rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is a boy deciding that love should not have to ask permission to breathe. He promises himself he will keep his distance, that he will only watch from across the street to make sure she is smiling and safe, that he will not cause trouble or ring the bell or step across forbidden thresholds. But grief is a poor chaperone. The first sight of his sister, the way her ponytail bounces when she runs, the way her backpack rides up as she jumps the last 2 steps, undoes all calculus, and before he can stop himself he has crossed, like a tide that forgets there is such a thing as shore. News travels with the speed of electricity in Port Charles, and by the time Jason hears what Danny intends to do, the plan is already in motion. The father's mind becomes a map again, this time not for legal avenues but for intervening corridors, city blocks, and protective strategies that look a lot like old instincts. He feels the heat rise, a clean, precise anger that sharpens rather than blinds, and he directs it into action. He will not let his son be made into evidence. He will not let a judge's ink dictate the pulse of a brother's heartbeat. He will not allow a man he once called brother to weaponize a child's affection as leverage in a war neither of them actually wants. He has tried silence and diplomacy and distance, now he will use his voice. The confrontation is inevitable, and inevitability has its own mercy, because at least everyone can stop pretending the wound is not there. When the brothers finally face each other, it is not with theatrics but with the heavy quiet of men who know that this room has seen too many winters to be impressed by snow. Drew stands on what he calls principle, laying out the architecture of his position, safety, order, consequence, brick by brick, and for a moment even Jason respects the symmetry of it. But then Jason places a single truth at the base of that wall and watches what happens. If your fortress requires a child's loneliness to remain standing, it is not a fortress, it is a prison. He reminds Drew that forewarning was given, that any attempt to turn Danny into a pawn would be met like an ambush, and that the boy's needs are not a trap to spring but a bell to answer. He does not threaten, he explains. He doesn't roar, he holds the line in a voice that has moved men to retreat without spilling a drop of blood. The room shrinks to 2 fathers and a choice, and for a heartbeat it appears Drew might lower the weapon called certainty. Then the moment passes, and the weapon is lifted again. The order stands. The brotherhood buckles. Outside, the city makes its own commentary. The courthouse steps gleam in late light like polished teeth. Alexis's briefcase grows heavier with every accommodation that saves something while sacrificing something else. Molly and Christina distract Scout with shared jokes and a scavenger hunt around the living room, hiding paper stars under cushions and behind picture frames so the little girl's laughter will not hear the silence where her brother's laugh should be. Rocco erects a fortress of cushions and calls it peace, as if naming it could make it real. People who should be allies become interpreters of fine print, and the moral math grows complicated until the equation feels like a maze designed to fail. It is a strange thing to watch affection be redacted with black bars and then ask the children to extract meaning from the remainder. It is stranger still to call it justice. Drew returns to his primary campaign, the effort to pull Willow out of the machinery that ground her down, and in his better moments this labor softens him. He remembers the nights when hope was a single thread and still he held it, remembers what it means to fight for someone when everyone else has given up. There is beauty in this work, and if it existed in a vacuum he might be redeemed by it, but the same gravity that keeps him anchored to his mission also drags him toward a rigidity that hurts people who do not deserve to hurt. He speaks about protecting Scout from chaos, and he is not wrong to want that. He is wrong to define chaos as her brother's embrace. He speaks about structure as if it were a lullaby, and perhaps it can be, but not when it drowns the melody of kinship in legalese. Jason does not wait for another crisis to rewrite the policy. He anticipates the next step in his son's heart, the next bus line, the next crossed street, and interposes himself where harm might flourish. He talks to Danny the way a lighthouse talks to a storm, steady, visible, impossible to mistake, and the boy hears him. The plan changes from a reckless dash to a strategic petition, from a lone venture to a coordinated effort. They will document Danny's conduct, his grades, his therapy sessions, his letters to Scout written with careful scrawl and folded into a shoebox like pressed flowers. They will ask not for the moon but for an afternoon, supervised by people even the most defensive judge might trust. They will relocate the argument from the blunt force of anger to the fine edge of reason. And if they are denied again, they will adjust again, because persistence is not merely noise, it is music stretched across time until it becomes undeniable. Port Charles pays attention during such fights. Lovers reconsider ultimatums. Friends measure their loyalties and discover which ones are made of string and which of steel. The Quartermain halls, newly quiet, echo with history, and Tracy, who has made an art of surviving the unspeakable, eyes the situation with the kind of ruthless pragmatism that sees outcomes before they have names. She understands that wars in this family are never about a single battle, they are about the cost of the next 3. She recognizes, too, that Drew's current posture serves no one in the long run, least of all Drew, because when a man builds a raft of rules to cross a river, he must remember to disassemble it upon reaching the other shore or he will drag dead wood into every future house he enters. Even those who side with Drew's intent begin to worry about his methods, about how easily protection curdles into punishment when the protected start to shrink from the protector's shadow. The inevitable spark arrives not as an explosion but as a small, human thing, a school project. Scout's class schedules a presentation day where each student brings a family treasure and explains its story. She chooses a photo of her and Danny at a summer fair, cotton candy on their lips, a sun-faded dragon rising behind them on a battered wooden carousel, and practices her speech in front of a mirror. She says the word brother with the soft reverence of someone invoking magic. On the morning of the presentation, she asks if Danny will come. Adults exchange looks that tell whole novels in a single flicker. The answer is a labyrinth, and the little girl stands at the entrance holding a picture like a torch. Alexis moves first, refusing to let the child carry the weight of a system's indecision. She makes calls and burns favors and does not flinch when someone suggests she is meddling. She has spent years learning when to argue and when to insist, and today she insists. The result is not a miracle, but it is a dent, a provisional hour, a supervised seat in the back row, a list of conditions that reads like a dare to breathe too loudly. It is enough. The room fills with parents and applause. Scout steps forward, holds up the photo, and begins. When she says brother, a boy in the back straightens, as if a word pulled a string attached to his spine. He does not wave, does not call out, does not move an inch beyond what the rules allow, but his eyes shine in a way that erases the last 2 months of nights spent worrying the seam of his pillow. The presentation ends, the hour expires, and a chaperone clears his throat, but something in the geometry of the moment has shifted. The sky outside looks the same, the court orders remain on the books, and still the air feels different, lighter, as if a room that has been shut too long has finally cracked a window. Drew hears about what happened in the gentlest possible way, and still it jars him more than any argument ever could. He imagines his daughter pronouncing the word brother like a spell and wonders when he decided that such spells were dangerous. He pictures Danny's silent posture and realizes that control is not the same as respect, that obedience is not the same as care, that compliance can look like victory while doom grows in the unplugged corners. He thinks about Willow, about how salvation often involves bending rules to serve the purpose they were written for in the first place rather than the power they confer. That night he walks the Quartermain halls and lets the portraits examine him without flinching. The quiet verdict is not guilty but not innocent either, it is a sentence to change. Change comes slowly, because courage rarely travels at sprinting speed in family court. The petition is revised, softening the sharpest edges, threading in the precedent of that single supervised hour. Jason signs where he must, abstains from the satisfaction of saying I told you so, and chooses the discipline of steadiness instead. Danny keeps writing letters and stacking them in his shoebox, though he now addresses them to dates instead of wishes. Scout tapes the summer fair photo to the inside of her backpack and touches it with 2 fingers before she leaves for school, the way sailors touch a charm before they face the waves. Alexis continues to broker hours as if she's bartering for oxygen. Molly and Christina keep the living room stocked with paper stars. Rocco adds a drawbridge to the cushioned fortress and names it Courage. And still, the story refuses to be a fairy tale. There are setbacks, there are spikes of temper, there are days when Drew's old arguments flare up and scorch the room before anyone can reach the fire extinguisher. There are days when Jason's patience is a thin wire that hums under too much weight. There are days when Danny stares at a calendar and wishes time would move faster, and days when Scout mistakes silence for punishment. But alongside those days are others in which progress becomes not a headline but a habit, brief visits that no longer feel like contraband, texts exchanged through adults who have learned to pass the phone with their hands open, a shared joke that somehow survives the bureaucracy that tried to suffocate it. What began as a restraining order turns into a scaffolding for a different kind of order, one that respects the purpose of protection without pretending it must be loveless. By the time Port Charles turns its attention to the next crisis, this one has not vanished but transformed, and the transformation belongs as much to the people as to the paperwork. Drew continues his crusade for Willow and finds that a softer stance with a boy and his sister has not weakened his resolve, it has purified it. Jason continues to mind the border between fury and fatherhood and discovers that the former can sharpen the latter without consuming it. Alexis keeps weaving the impossible into the possible. Danny keeps learning that sometimes the bravest path is the one that waits rather than runs, and Scout learns that family is a language that survives translation. The future will surely test these lessons, because Port Charles never misses an opportunity to test, but the foundation has been corrected. If a confrontation comes again, and it might, because brothers do not stop being brothers when the paper trail grows long, it will land on ground less likely to crack. And if a boy once more must measure the distance to his sister, he will find that each step is shorter than the last, not because the law has vanished, but because the people it governs have finally remembered why they asked the law to exist at all.